Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Peter from New Masters Academy, and I'm here today to talk with Catherine Bobkoski, the wonderful artist and instructor who is teaching a 4-day online workshop on Botanical Mastery. So this is a 4-day workshop. It's running from November the 2nd to November the 5th.
Hello,
And if you
everyone.
are
Welcome.
interested, before we begin,
My name is
there are
Peter from
links
New
below the
Masters
videos.
Academy,
So
and
that
I'm
is
here
at
today to talk with Catherine Bobkoski, the wonderful artist and
promos.anime.art/workshops.
instructor who is teaching
So we're going to get
a
into some questions
4-day
about
online
the
workshop
content and
on
the curriculum,
Botanical
how this
Mastery.
workshop is structured. But I just wanted to ask firstly, Catherine, what is it about this subject matter, botanicals, that interests you? How did you get into it? Because I know that a lot of us know you as this amazing painter who does paint and draw flowers. And I'm just interested, how did that passion start? How did that come about for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, and thank you for hosting the Q&A today. Yeah, flowers, gosh, it was kind of a journey. When I was in art school, I really focused a lot on figurative work. I did a lot of figure drawing and portrait painting. I thought I was going to be a portrait painter, like ages ago. That was sort of my
Mm,
long-term goal, or even to do like multi-figure narrative work. That was something I was really interested in. Um, and I kind of discovered almost just purely through accident still life painting. I started that actually because I wanted to be able to paint from life all the time. I wanted to be able to just, have the opportunity to paint as an exercise from life. And you can't always do that if you're only working on figurative subjects. And that kind of evolved into me painting a lot of still life and getting really interested in it. And then gradually from there, it sort of evolved into like, oh, flowers are cool. And oh, flowers are actually really difficult. Until that sort of became like almost my primary focus was painting flowers. Um, and I find them to be, just as complex and nuanced and subtle and challenging as painting a portrait. I mean, there's just as many things to think about with structure of a flower, the level of detail, and
right.
the complexity of the form. There's a lot of stuff, yeah. um, but I mean, even besides that, I mean, I just think it's a really meaningful subject. And I remember one time I was uh, you know, exploring some of the botanical gardens that we have, here in LA. And there's some really great ones that people should go explore, like Descanso Gardens or Huntington Library Gardens. But if you go to any of those places, like in January or the middle of winter here, it looks like a horrible place. It's just, little thorny sticks
Mhm.
kind of poking up out of the ground. It looks like this awful, like, dead place where nothing could possibly, grow. But when you come back just a couple months later, it's just absolutely bursting with life. Um, and so I always imagine it like this process of death and rebirth and
Mhm.
resurrection and um uh which I mean people can read a lot of symbology and stuff into that. I don't necessarily want to, say anything particular about that. But except that, what do we do as artists? But we're here for a little brief amount of time. We're all going to end that journey at some point, and in the meantime, we're just making something beautiful uh, to show to the world and to express ourselves. And that's not that different, I think, from what a rose does, right? Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
that's
besides that, I
beautiful.
just love them. Oh, thank you. Jeez.
I mean, that's amazing. So yeah, I mean, I can tell just how much this subject means to you, and it just says to me like you're the right person to be teaching this, because not only are you an incredibly technically skilled artist, but also the subject matter, you have this personal connection to it, and I can really see that whenever I look at your work, how much of you is coming through in that. Just the
Thank you.
poetry, especially the way that you capture the light on the subject as well. It's poetic and is yeah, it's amazing to see this joy that you have for the art combined with this technical skill that obviously has taken so much of your life to get to this point as well. So I'm super excited personally to see how, across 4 days, we're going to see how you develop that process or disseminate that information.
Thank you so much, first of all. Like, I mean, that's the whole thing to me. It's like, I think a lot about the subject, but I think a lot also about light, how to communicate light. And to me, I think the real magic in making art comes from not only having technical skills, not only having, an understanding of fundamentals and the visual language and how to use those things to communicate, but that, well, what are you communicating? What do you have
Mhm.
to say? And, I think my goal, I'm always still working on, of course, I think we're all still working on as artists, is to have both of those things, the technical skill, but also the actual message behind it. Um, both of those things together. I think that's what makes great art that's really memorable, the stuff that we look back on and want to see in museums and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, ultimately that's what I want to make and that's what I want to help other people discover too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's like connecting the head and the heart in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You need both.
Right. So, okay, so getting into the content and the curriculum of this workshop, what is the overarching goal of the botanical workshop, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main goal here really is for the students to end the workshop with a finished original work portfolio piece that they can say basically this is an original work that I made. This is something you can put on your website. You can enter it in shows or whatever. This is like a real thing. This is a portfolio piece that you will have at the end of the workshop. That you'll have a lot of guidance and help moving through in order to produce it. But it's going to be your original work, not just something that you're doing as an assignment or an exercise that you're doing to gain skills, but a personal piece of art that you've created. That's the goal.
Mhm. So, will we be setting up our own still life for this?
Yes, absolutely. I
Right.
mean,
Tell
that's
us about
kind
it.
of, oh, for sure. Yes, please. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the starting point of making an original composition for a floral still life piece is you have to set up the still life. I'm not giving you photo reference and saying like, oh yes, I set this up perfectly to get the right result. Just follow along with me. No, you're doing it. And I'm going to help you with that. With what are some things to think about, some considerations that can go into that process of putting together the still life, of putting together your composition. But ultimately, the students are going to do that themselves. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. So, is it about working from life? So, will it be? Is that a crucial part of the workshop to be working from life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of like I said before, it's a benefit of doing a still life that you can work from life. You almost don't have an excuse to not work from life because, well, still life subjects are everywhere. Flowers specifically can get a little bit tricky. They tend to like wilt and die and fall apart and stuff. Um, I mean, I also have some tricks up my sleeve for making them last as long as possible, but there's really nothing that you can substitute the experience of painting from life, right?
Mm.
Having that, you know, uh, from life observation as part of your process, I think is really critical for making work that is, like we were just saying, not just technically good, but like, emotionally resonant as well.
Right.
Because you're having a real experience with that subject and not just, looking very closely at a photograph that maybe you didn't even take. And I think we all know just from taking pictures, on your cell phone or whatever, that the photograph doesn't actually capture the experience. It doesn't actually, uh, mimic what the looking at something in real life, is like. So you really can't just, do this kind of thing only working from photographs. You might end up doing kind of a blend of the two in the end, but that working from life aspect is absolutely critical.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even I'm thinking, just picturing the work much of the work that I've seen from you, you can tell that it was done from life because it doesn't look like a photograph.
It's like always kind of a shame, don't you think, when you see like paintings that it's just like, oh, it looks like a painting of a photograph. It doesn't
Mhm.
look like a painting of a subject. Um, and I always really try to avoid that, even though I do end up working from photographs a lot because I'm kind of a slow painter. I mean, I'm gonna have to like, pick up the pace a little bit for a 4-day workshop. But anytime I'm painting, whether it's from photographs or not, I certainly don't want it to have a sort of like static feeling to it. I want it to feel like um, more like an experience of looking at something rather than just a still static representation of something.
Mhm. That's very interesting. So, how will the workshop guide participants from the foundational elements to more advanced techniques within botanical painting?
Yeah, well, uh, I'm going to basically guide the students through, roughly what I do myself, basically. I mean, um, the thing about making fine art painting, about making any kind of painting, whatever genre it is, you need to have some kind of a process that's like at least vaguely repeatable, Granted, every painting is different and every subject is different. You might not always literally do the exact same things. Um, but I mean, how do you even get from blank canvas to a final thing? Um, and how
Scary.
can you do that? It's scary, right? Yeah, absolutely. And it's even more scary when like you've done it once and it's like, okay, now like cool, do it again. Let's see what you got. You need some kind of a method, right? Or some kind of a process that is, logical, allows for some freedom, allows for some creativity, but also, puts some kind of like guidelines or some kind of, you know, gives you some kind of a track to just work through. So that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to guide the students through it. It's a logical progression. It's uh, allows again for experimentation and some freedom and everything. But overall, we start with basics. We start with just sketching, drawing, thinking about value sketches, composition sketches, color studies, and then from there, taking all of that information, all of that understanding that you've gleaned from that practice, and then applying that to the finished painting. And then the process of making a painting is very similar. You just start with basics and you slowly develop it gradually from a very general statement to one that's more and more nuanced and specific. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much answers my next question as well, which is really just going to be, it's a 4-day workshop. So, like, how is it just structured to ensure that smooth progression to actually come out with that portfolio piece at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people can look at the structure maybe, but we start really with okay, composition, setting up the still life, doing sketches to work out, just very basically, how do you break down the picture plane into light shapes, dark shapes? How do you use those basic visual tools to create focus and interest in the composition? And then from there, we'll talk about color. I think the whole second day is all about color, which is super important to me, and I think a very worthwhile thing to spend time on when you're talking about flowers because they can be so subtle and so uh, colorful, and you need some sort of again like a process or a method in order to deal with that. So we'll do color studies. And then the last 2 days of the workshop are dedicated to the actual process of painting the finished work. And I think that's like a very, reasonable way to break down your time, by the way, anytime you're embarking on on making a big painting project like that, spend half of your time on prep. And you'll be glad you did, because that's where you do all of the really difficult problem solving that you don't want to have to figure out on the final canvas. So that's the idea. Yeah.
Cool. Just moving into more technical aspects, we'll talk about materials in a second. But I know you mentioned like sketches and color. Are there any other core concepts that you want to bring across in this workshop? that students will be learning?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we'll talk a lot about paint application, like using the actual painting tools to create, interesting textures and interesting edges. That's really important to me. That's something I have a lot of fun with in my own painting. So it's something I want to have the opportunity to talk about in the workshop. It's the kind of thing that you don't always get a lot of time to really discuss deeply in a normal class format where you might only have a couple of hours. So in this kind of more immersive, longer format, I think we can really dig into, talking about, okay, how do you actually get the paint on the surface in an interesting way? So I'll definitely talk about that. Um, and I think I'll talk also a lot about, making decisions about color, like I was talking about before. Pretty much always when I paint, I use a somehow limited palette. But how do you decide on that? How do you, locate the right color chords or the right color harmony that's going to, sort of solve the painting for you?
Mhm.
And actually, it ends up making the painting process way easier if you just figure out what are the right colors from the start. So I'll talk about, how to do that, and that's really relevant. Actually, again, no matter what you're painting, it doesn't have to be flowers, but you might use that same sort of idea. Same thing with paint application for whatever subject you're working with.
Well, that's exciting. Um, I'm just reading a comment here. Somebody wrote in asking, will there be a materials list available for the course? Yes, that will be coming out this week. But I think that's a good time. Maybe we can shift to talking a little bit about materials. Are there any specific tools or materials that are recommended that students bring with them?
Yeah, I mean, probably the most specialized thing is just a still life stand, which isn't even that specialized. It's like a table. Do you have a table you could put your still life on? I mean, there you go. But yeah, having some kind of a setup where you can, you know, uh, arrange your still life so that you can, see it clearly and look at it and paint from it, and do that comfortably. So still life stand, definitely a good thing to have for this class. By the way, I had a totally improvised still life stand in my studio for years. It was like a bunch of storage boxes like stacked up on top of each other with like a tablecloth on top. So, you can really just jerry rig something together if you don't already have some kind of formal still life stand in your studio. But besides that, it's an oil painting workshop. If you're already an oil painter, you probably have everything that you need. Pretty standard list of colors, your primary colors plus some earth tones, maybe a green if you feel like you need a green or a blue or that kind of thing added to your palette. Um, Brushes, I mean, I always recommend having a wide variety of brushes, but again, it's kind of the standard thing. Like, have some hog's hair brushes, have some
Mhm.
synthetic brushes, have some softer ones, some smaller ones, some bigger ones, etc. It's pretty normal stuff. Um, I tend to recommend that students not use too many complicated mediums, unless you want to, if that's something you're used to and you enjoy using. Like, yeah, sure, but I like to keep my painting materials really pretty simple. It's mostly paint, a little bit of oil, end of list. So you can have really a very simple list of materials to get started with painting and have a great experience with it too. And I think it's a great way to paint, by the way.
Great. And if you guys do have questions for Catherine about materials, feel free to ask. Also, during the workshop, Catherine is like a walking encyclopedia when it comes to like painting materials. So yeah, that's a great opportunity as well. So just moving on to interactivity and just engagement during this class. Can attendees of this workshop directly interact with you during these live demos?
Yes, we're really excited about that. Actually, that it's the whole point of this is to have kind of a more interactive kind of experience where
Yeah,
students can, yeah,
it's
students can,
exciting. No, it's great.
yeah, it is exciting. I'm stoked. 'Cause usually I'm trying to read a chat or something, or that kind of thing. But we want students to actually be able to, you know, talk with us and converse a little bit and ask their questions, in their own voice.
Mhm.
So it's really more like a real in-person workshop experience where you get that kind of interaction with the instructor, and that more like kind of personal experience too. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be great.
Great. So could you explain a little bit about the difference between the general morning critique sessions and the VIP sessions, which are one-on-one critiques?
Yeah, absolutely. So every morning of the workshop, we'll have time set aside for a critique session for all of the students enrolled. Um, and that session basically is about just giving you some direct feedback on the work that you did in the previous day, which is super helpful, of course. But the VIP students will get an additional critique session at the end of the day. So you basically get just more feedback, more one-on-one interaction, and more um, just more individualized attention with that VIP experience. That's why it's called VIP. It's important. um, so uh, with that individualized kind of attention and just more one-on-one interaction, I think it can be really helpful to have your specific questions answered and to maybe even get a little bit deeper into specifically how to develop your painting so it can be the most successful it can possibly be.
Fantastic. So how will the workshop accommodate varying artistic expressions? Let's say artists come in here and they have a style that differs from yours. Is that okay? And I'm really interested. Maybe we can talk about this because I know you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that uh, you didn't come directly from this uh, passion of just painting botanicals. Like you really wanted to be a figurative artist for a while. So I'm just curious, what about artists who are interested in botanicals, but maybe they come from a figurative background or like a totally different industry? Like, how is that still going to be of value to them? I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I paint, I think, completely differently from all of my instructors that I had when I was in school. And I would expect, any of my students to paint very differently from me too, you know. I mean, ultimately, everyone kind of brings their own specific interests, like their visual interests, their aesthetic interests, or just the kind of way that they like to move paint, their specific calligraphy, to whatever uh, you know, workshop or class or et cetera that they're working through. So I mean, same thing here. When I give feedback or critique to students, um, I'm not trying to tell them like, oh, just like paint it more like I would, and then it'd be better. It's more about, okay, what are the visual tools? What's the visual language? What's like the vocabulary and the grammar of the
Hmm.
visual language, and how are you using that? And maybe how could you do that more effectively, or how could you use those same tools slightly differently in order to get your message to come across more directly or better. So I think that it doesn't really matter if you have different priorities in your work than I do, or if you have kind of a different way of working than I do, or different interests than I do. That feedback is still going to be really useful. Um, I was talking to Glenn Vilppu, who's wonderful.
Amazing. Yeah.
He's amazing. Yeah, everyone should go and learn how to draw figures from him because he's incredible and an incredible person too. But I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and he told me something like, if you're chasing style, you're chasing obsolescence.
Right. Yeah.
Just something I think he's maybe said a few times, but it's really true. Whatever instructor you're trying to learn from, don't just try to mimic their style. What is it like on a fundamental conceptual basis are they trying to teach you? And try to make that your takeaway rather than just try to mimic on a surface level what they're doing. And whenever I'm teaching, I'm trying to impart that information as best as I can. So I hope that answers the question. It's kind of a difficult question, but
Sure,
something I try to work
absolutely.
on.
No, I think that's great, because obviously it's a botanical workshop, and there will be a lot of discussion, I'm sure, about the subject matter specifically and how to handle that. But also there is this wider conceptual element of just the process of creating that I know is so important to you. So it's not just about flowers and botanicals. There is this wider idea of creating, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, well, problem solving in general. I mean, if you're trying to make an original work of art, you're starting from scratch, trying to come up with an idea and then trying to figure out all of the little, pitfalls and difficulties that inevitably come up along the way. I mean, that kind of ability to problem solve and resolve the composition or resolve whatever rendering difficulties you might come across along the way, that's relevant no matter what you're painting, first of all. And then just besides that, I mean, like I do have a really strong figure based background, and I think about that stuff all the time when I'm painting flowers. It's really not that different. You're still thinking about gesture, structure, you're still thinking about working from big shapes down to smaller shapes. You're still thinking about finding metaphors of simple geometric forms in order to understand something that's inevitably way more complex than that. Um, and you're still thinking about how to use gesture as a compositional element. How do you use that overall to just like create the visual journey, the movement through the painting? I mean, that's all stuff that you would learn in a standard good figure drawing
Mm,
course.
mhm.
But it's all absolutely relevant to still life painting, flower painting, and I mean a lot of other things too, frankly. I mean, that's why it's such a critical thing to learn how to draw in the first place. That's how you learn how to draw, is to work on the figure. But I think for me anyway, I find it so fascinating to be able to take those same tools, those same concepts, and then apply them to other things that you might also be interested in. Um, those are the things I still think about, like day one figure drawing stuff. I still think about all the time when I'm working on flowers.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And it's one of the things that I'm most excited about when I watch you work is the way that you come at this from so many different angles, with this depth of knowledge about these concepts, coming from figure drawing and construction and gesture, as if it was from all these different subjects, and then channeling that into this uh, idea with flowers. I think it just adds this amazing depth to it. So yeah, that's what I love about your painting.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
That's awfully nice.
so with talking a little bit more about skill development for students and techniques, what key techniques or practices will be highlighted that will elevate the participants' skills during the workshop? So would that be like wet into wet or studies? Like how does that work?
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to do a lot of studies, which, sometimes I notice when I'm teaching, you might advise students to do thumbnail studies, to do preliminary sketches, to do all that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes, I know I did this when I was a student, so I'm not trying to accuse anybody of doing anything that I didn't do myself. But sometimes you just go through the motions of doing those things, and then like, okay, well, I did that thumbnail. That was cool, I guess. I'll just like put it over here and then get to the real business of painting. Kind of easy to, I think, lose the connection of, how does that process of doing a study actually apply to the real painting process? So that's something I definitely want to talk about more and unpack a lot more in the workshop.
Mhm.
Um, how are those things actually helpful, and how do you actually use those preliminary studies to help guide you through and help you problem solve through the final painting? So that's something we're definitely going to talk about. We'll do a lot of wet into wet painting, of course, because in 4 days, oil painting isn't even going to dry in 4 days. So it's all wet into wet, but it's a long painting process. So over 2 really full days of painting, you can do quite a lot. So I think it's a little bit more, there's a few more things to think about in that length of time with the painting, uh, with how do you, slowly build up more detail and more specificity in the work uh, over that amount of time, given that everything is still going to be very movable in an oil painting.
Mhm.
So we'll talk a lot about how to deal with that. There's some really fun things to do when you're doing all direct painting and all wet into wet. Because it is so forgiving and so movable, you can scrape things back, you can blend things together, you can knock things back and then pick up again. You can build a lot of really, really exciting paint texture. So we're going to have a lot of fun again talking about paint application in this class. I think it's going to be exciting to see that all happen in real time. Again, a lot of online classes I teach, it's a couple hours. That's all you get. So over this amount of time, you can, really see what the painting process actually looks like, not just what's the sort of sped up, you know,
Right.
speed painting Bob Ross version, but like what's the real version? What does it really look like? Um, so I'm really excited to dig into that in a lot more detail.
Exciting. That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm just coming pretty much to the end of my questions here. I just wanted to ask, after completing this workshop, uh, how might artists best showcase or integrate their botanical painting skills into different painting genres?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I kind of mentioned earlier a little bit about having a process that is, sort of repeatable. And I think that's something that students are really going to really be able to take away from this worksheet, basically. Because you're seeing the whole thing happen in real time, you're being slowly walked through the whole process. You're really getting a feel for how does that method actually work? How does it not just oh, you should do some studies, but like practically speaking on a real world level, how do you actually make that happen, right? How do you actually take those initial thoughts and develop them further into something more finished? So I think that's going to be something that, again, it's not just what you do for a still life painting or a botanical painting. That's what you would do for any kind of studio painting for any genre that you want to finish at a high level, right? You'd have some kind of a method and a procedure for problem solving and working through the
Mhm.
difficulties of that specific thing. Um, and seeing how that's done, being walked through how to do it yourself, getting the feedback pretty immediately on what you've been working on. Um, I think that's going to be extremely helpful for people that, and I hear students say all the time, I've done all these drawing courses, I've done all these painting courses, I know all this technical stuff, but I don't necessarily know how to put the pieces together to make original work. Um, and I think that's going to be a big takeaway from here. Uh, how do you put the pieces together? How do you go from that point A to point B? Um, and not that that has to look the same for all the students as it does for me, but it's a starting point for a process that you can pick up and bring over to other genres, that you can kind of mold and shape to fit your individual's priorities and needs. Um, uh, and I'm excited to see people go through that process too, because it's always really fun when you see students actually like develop their own creative ideas and get really excited. So I'm excited to see that too myself. Anyway.
Great. Yeah, no, fantastic. Uh, and I guess once this workshop ends, people are going to be walking away with a portfolio piece, which is a really empowering thing as well.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Um, and sometimes I talk to students about stuff that they're just practicing and working on their own. And you get those sort of lightning strikes, right? Where, oh, I was just doodling and I got something really good. I don't even know how it happened. Or, oh, I just kind of threw together the still life and I just thought I'd paint it for an afternoon. And I don't even know what happened. This like awesome thing just fell off my brush. And those things are exciting when they happen. I think we've all had that experience of, you don't even know exactly how you did it, but you got something really, really good. That's always exciting. The key and the hope is to be able to make that somewhat repeatable, right? You can't always make lightning strike twice, but you can make your own luck, right? You can set up good circumstances for lightning to strike. You can set up the circumstances for good things to happen in your studio. So it's not all random.
Right.
And that's something I've had to learn really the hard way myself. But I kind of know how, vaguely what works for me, and I can hopefully help students to make lightning strike more often for them too. It's not a mystery. It's not all luck. It's also just good practices. It's good procedures. It's having a method, and having a method helps you to be more creative, I think. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Uh, Being able to invest that time over the 4 days to really get into the specifics of figuring out that process that they can then use to be able to repeat and keep making more of these pieces in the future as well, that they can be proud of as finished pieces, I think is really exciting. And I've heard that once this workshop ends and they have that portfolio piece at the end, there is going to be a student gallery available.
yes, yeah, there'll be a an online exhibit, an online showcase for all of the students who participate. Uh, to share their work together, and that'll be promoted by New Masters Academy. And I think that's really exciting. It's kind of if you've never participated in something like that before, I think it's a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the idea of sharing your work more
Yeah.
publicly. Um, in a really supportive environment, of course, and have a lot of people see it basically. So I'm really excited about that. That you go through this whole process together as a team. You come out with a portfolio piece at the end, and then you even get that extra last step, which is to show it.
Yeah.
So that'll be at the end of the workshop with the online exhibit for all of the students who participate.
Wonderful. So I think that's a great place to wrap this up. That's the end of my questions. I'd just like to thank you so much, Catherine, for coming here to talk with us today about this. And for everybody tuning in, there are links below so that you can find out more about this workshop. Head over to promos.nma.art/workshops, and that's going to be available. This workshop is 4 days. It's from November the 2nd to November the 5th. So thanks again, Catherine.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your questions. And I hope to see you guys at the workshop.